So the next video will be the third part of 10 Girls Who Made a Difference, Susanna Wesley. Susanna counted 17, 18, 19, 20. Well done, her mother said. You're a clever girl. Now what comes after 20? The child thought. 21, she asked. That's right. And then what? But Susanna had reached the end of her numbers. Let's sing the number song to her, Mrs. Annesley told some of her other children. 1, 2, 3, 21, 22, 23, they sang to the tune of a nursery rhyme. 24 and 25, Susanna. And they all fell about in a fit of giggles. The youngest of them laughed too, though she didn't know what they were all laughing about. Why do you always sing 25, Susanna? The 5-year-old asked one of her brothers. He grinned. It's because Dad and Mum had 25 children and you're the youngest. That makes you the 25th. Susanna held up both hands and looked at all 10 fingers. Then she made her hands into fists and opened them up again. That's 20, she told her brother. She made one fist and opened that hand again, and that comes to 25. That's a lot of children, the girl said. She made her little finger dance. And this one is 25, Susanna. I think we should be getting on with your schoolwork, Mrs. Annesley told her youngest children. 3 sat down on the floor at her knee to continue the lesson on counting. 4 were on chairs around the table where they had reading to do. And 4 others were in Dr. Annesley's study learning history with him. The rest were either out at work or away from home. When it was nearly lunchtime, their father came into the living room to ask them their daily questions. From a little book of questions and answers, which he called a catechism, he asked each a question. Who made you? He smiled at Susanna. God made me, she replied. Then it was to turn the next one up. Why did God make you? God made me to worship and adore him. What else did God make? God made all things. By the time Dr. Annesley reached the oldest child, the questions were really quite difficult. But he asked them every day. But as he asked them every day, they knew the answers. Where's Susanna? We want her to come out and play with us, the little girl heard one of the sisters asking. But Susanna didn't answer. She was under the table in her father's study, where he and his friends couldn't see her because of the heavy tablecloth that reached right down to the floor. Although she didn't understand most of what the men talked about, she still loved to hear them speaking. Susanna pictured their faces. When her father said the name of Jesus, she knew his face would look warm and soft. And when sin was being discussed, she imagined his expression being sad. Whenever heaven was mentioned, she knew exactly how he would look, for her father couldn't speak about heaven without his eyes smiling. But the talk went on for a long, long time, and the child fell asleep. I think your pet is under the table again, one of the visitors commented. A man who was new to the group thought there must be a dog in the room. But Dr. Annesley knew better. He took a cushion from behind him and held it out to his friend. Put that under her head, please. I'd like to have a talk with you, Dad, Susanna said 7 or 8 years later. Come into my study, her father smiled. There's nowhere else to talk quietly in this busy house. Now, what's worrying you? He asked when they were settled by the wood fire. Susanna knew this could be difficult, but she had thought out what she wanted to say. I understand you felt strongly that you shouldn't join the Church of England when Parliament said all ministers had to. That's why you weren't able to preach in public until King Charles said you could do it again. But I really believe that I should belong to the Church of England. Dr. Annesley looked at his daughter. I've brought this on myself, he thought. I've taught them all to use their brains and to think for themselves. Tell me why you think so, he asked Susanna. The girl gave very clear reasons why she should leave the dissenters and join the Church of England. And that's what she did shortly afterwards. Who's that young man? Susanna asked her sister one day. That's Samuel Wesley, and you and he have something in common. The girl looked at the stranger and wondered what that might be. We're about the same height, she teased. Only he stopped growing and I'll get taller than I am just now. Her sister laughed. It's not only your height you have in common. You're a strong mind as each other. How do you know that? Asked Susanna. Because he did exactly the same as you did. He left the dissenters and went back to the Church of England. Interesting, thought the young Susanna. We do have something in common after all. November 1688, wrote the 19-year-old bride in her diary. I married Samuel Wesley, minister of the Church of England. We're starting married life in London, where I'm going to have to be the best housewife in the whole city to make £28 a year feed and clothe us. I need 2 new shirts, Samuel told Susanna some months after they were married. I'm afraid you'll have to wait, she explained. There's hardly enough money for food, let alone new shirts. But I'll patch your old ones very carefully. Samuel held up an ancient shirt. You'll just be joining patches together, he grumped. If you can't manage on what I own, I'll just have to find another job. Susanna wondered what expense she could cut back on, but she couldn't think of a single thing. I can have my new shirts now, Wesley announced as he burst into their little room some months later. I'm going to be minister to a crew of a boat that works back and forth across the Irish Sea. Susanna looked horrified, thinking that she might have to live on board. She heaved a sigh of relief when he went on. You can stay in a boarding house while I'm away, and we'll be able to afford that because I'll be earning £70 a year. But after just 6 months, Samuel was back on land and looking for yet another job. Being at sea didn't agree with him at all. You're a grandfather once again, Mrs. Annesley announced to her husband in 1690 when little Samuel Wesley was born. She took her husband by the arm into the next-door bedroom where their daughter's baby had just been born. Hello, grandfather, Susanna said as though the tiny infant in her arms was speaking. Samuel screwed up his eyes and looked at the world. He couldn't have thought much of it because he opened his mouth and yelled. I wonder if he'll be a preacher one day, Dr. Annesley said. He's certainly got the lungs for it. Susanna handed the baby to her mother and cuddled down to sleep, grateful that she had been able to come home for his birth. Her parents' home seemed so much more comfortable than any of the ones she and her husband had in their first year and a half of their marriage. Where is South Ormsby? Susanna asked some months later when Samuel told her they were moving there. It's in Lincolnshire, he explained. It's a little village with a population of just over 200. Lincolnshire, wailed Susanna. That's worlds away from here. Nonsense, it's only 150 miles away, and you'll grow to like the countryside. Susanna picked up the baby even though he was sound asleep. She needed someone to cuddle while she did some serious thinking. That means I won't see my parents, and I won't see my brothers and sisters either. What about my friends? They're not able to travel as far as that, and I can't afford to come back and see them. Tears started to roll down her face. She hugged baby Samuel close, wiping the tears away on his shawl so that her husband didn't see them. What's the house like? She asked. It's simple, her husband explained. Just a country house made of mud with 1 room and a loft. Susanna thought of her parents' home. Do you know anything else about it? She asked, dreading the answer. I understand that the village women are cleaning it out for us. She risked a smile. That's kind of them. Anything else? Oh yes, he said, turning away as he spoke. It seems that there's no glass in the windows, but there are shutters, so it should be cosy enough. No glass, thought Susanna, and no natural light when the shutters are closed. She sat down, rocking the baby to comfort herself, and a thought struck her. If that's where God wants us to be, then it's the best place for us. The Wesleys spent 7 years in South Ormsby before moving to Epworth, where they had a bigger home for their growing family. Will you run a school for us in Epworth? One of the children asked as they packed up their slates and chalk for the last time in their old home. I certainly will, Susanna told her. I started the school as soon as my first little boy was old enough to begin learning, and I'll keep it going until the last of you girls is taught. What's the most important lesson? The girl asked. Is it reading or writing or counting? They're all important, her mother explained, but the most important lesson you can learn is that you need to trust in Jesus to be saved. There is nothing in the whole wide world more important than that. Mrs. Wesley has a little school in the rectory, Samuel told some members of his new congregation. He was quite happy for more pupils to attend the class as his wife ran from 9 to 12 each morning and from 2 to 5 in the afternoons. He was especially happy if some parents gave a small gift towards the school, as he was forever running out of money. I hear Mr. Wesley's wife is very strict, and news went round the village after 2 of the local children joined the class. She is one of the new pupils admitted when he was asked about his teacher. She's very, very strict, but she's fair with it. Mrs. Wesley's having Sunday meetings in the rectory was a local gossip one day. Her husband is away from home, and although his assistant is taking services, She thinks there should be afternoon meetings too, one of Susanna's neighbours told her friend. Will you come to the meeting with me? Yes, I'll come along, her friend agreed, and they went. Did you see how well the Wesley children listened to the sermon their mother read to us? A neighbour commented as the two women walked home afterwards. I did indeed, was the reply. No wonder she teaches our Tommy so well. You must use her brains, Susanna told her children and other pupils over and over again. Think everything through for yourselves, and the most important thing to think through is this. Where will you go when you die? You may decide not to believe in God when you're alive, but do you think God will be taken in on the judgment day when you tell him he doesn't exist? And when in 1709 their home burned down and their 5-year-old son John was only just rescued from the flames, she reminded her family yet again that one day they would all have to meet their Maker. Samuel soon had a new house underway, and when they moved into it, Susanna wrote her thoughts down in her diary. Another new home, and a nice solid one too. I am glad it's built of brick. It's so much safer than wood, she added, thinking back to the fire. I suppose it's because the new house gives us a new beginning, thinking back over the years. They've not been easy, but I've so much to thank God for. Of our 19 babies, we have 10 still alive, and though poor Mary is crippled, some of them are now Christians, and that is a joy of my heart. I'll pray for the others to be converted until the day I die. And every day I pray that God will use my dear children to spread the good news that Jesus saves. As the years passed, and the children moved away from home, Susanna wrote more in her diary, especially as her husband was difficult to live with. It seems that God is calling Charles and John to preach the gospel, she wrote. My heart is singing. And they did become preachers, two of the most famous preachers England had ever had. Like their mother, they had minds of their own, and also like Susanna, they left the church they'd been brought up in, but they didn't join another of the churches in England. They started the Methodist Church, which has since spread throughout England and to many other countries in the world. So, that is the third part of 10 in that book, and I hope you're enjoying them.